So I think the title of this class is supposed to be Meals from Food Storage. Is that right?
That's what I have up there, yep.
Okay, Meals from Food Storage. Okay, so let's figure out what food storage is. Would you like to play a game?
Sure.
Okay, we're going to play a game. Have you ever played I'm going to grandma's house and I'm going to bring?
Right.
Okay, we're going to play. I'm going to fill up my food storage shelf and I am going to bring, but it doesn't have to be in alphabetical order. Just some item that you think would belong in your food storage. So we're just gonna go down and around and around. Okay. And start that way. So,
Flour.
okay,
Spices?
spices,
Well, I was gonna say almond milk, but let's go with sugar.
sugar, okay,
Being Asian, rice.
Yes.
rice. What kind of rice?
White rice.
Okay.
That's all he could eat is white rice.
Okay, what else is food storage? Honey,
You got me.
okay.
Not very tasty.
Canned goods.
Canned goods, okay.
Powdered milk.
Powdered milk, back there.
Me too. Powdered milk.
I would say, items from right next door, where it's all there and we can buy it and it's wonderful. But I guess they need to be specific. Honey.
We said
Because
that.
it keep, oh,
We have to do a new one.
wheat to grind into flour.
Okay. All right, and we have one more person.
Oil.
Oil. Okay, you guys are really on top of your long-term food storage.
We forgot water.
So, are you also on top of what the church's recommendations are for food storage?
3 months now, isn't it?
Yes, you start out with 3 months of storing the kinds of foods that you normally eat. So you can have your pudding and your pancake mix and your vanilla and your tomato soup, all of that kind of stuff that you normally eat. Then it says to work on your longer term storage, and it sounds like you guys are already there. So that would cover wheat, powdered milk, beans, oils, honey, other grains, legumes if you wanted. So that's your basic food storage. And I gave this a lot of thought. What I finally decided to do was to help you know how to use those longer term food storage items in your regular everyday cooking. So that you know how to use those items and that you're accustomed to eating them, which I think would be really important, because if all of a sudden all you had to eat was whole wheat, it might be kind of bad. Yes, it might not agree with your tummy. So, can anyone tell me what has changed about preparedness over the last, let's say, 5 or 10 years?
Well, they're really not telling us to do it anymore. I mean, we've had plenty of instruction to get this together, and it's not the main topic of conversation anymore.
It's not emphasized, is it? What else can you tell me about food storage?
The emergency kits, that if we had to leave our home, have that ready. And I've seen on, I think it's Family Rules, that's on the BYU channel. There was a family that had that, and they just had it so organized, and each of their children, even though, you know, they weren't teens even, but they had certain assignments and things that they were supposed to do, and they had a backpack for each child, depending on the age and size of the child, you know, what they could carry and things like that. I was just really impressed. And they found out that when that earthquake hit Salt Lake and other areas, you know, and they had tents and everything just right there to just put right in their car and leave if they had to.
Okay, so you brought up one really important thing. Where can you get food storage items.
Right there.
Okay, can you tell me what's available there?
You bought stuff, tell me.
Well, it used to be that you could go in as a family and buy either a bag of stuff or you could can it right there, and we can't do that anymore. And they've also changed what you can get. There's more long-term that I'm seeing available, and other products are not available.
Okay, so, the only thing I'm aware of that you can buy in a bag anymore is wheat.
Oatmeal's over here in a can.
Yes.
Army, US Army food store up in Idaho Falls, they've got those MRIs and I love them. MREs, I mean, you want them.
And some grocery stores have food storage like Ridley's.
Winco has a lot of that.
Okay.
Oh, restaurant places that have food.
Okay, so we have had to kind of branch out from our home storage place because it has apples, carrots, onions, potatoes, beans, wheat, oats, rice, sugar, spaghetti, macaroni, and milk. We used to have more things
The
available.
best part of that is most of it lasts 30 years.
Mhm.
They're supposed to last.
If you go into Provident Living, it says that the things in the home storage are 30 years plus. If they're in cans, they've got the oxygen
I think
reducers.
they must have changed that because I bought some wheat or rice years ago and after 15 years, it was smelly.
Did it have the oxygen reducer in there
It had
or
something.
absorber?
It had whatever in there from the LDS food stores.
Okay, well, that's something to be aware of. So what does that mean? You have to rotate.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to rotate the food in your food.
For me, it was insurance.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, insurance, but it's really expensive insurance if you get to where you need it and you can't use it because it's either spoiled or your digestive system won't take
Yeah,
it.
I check it every
So, the other thing that I have noticed is there is just not the availability of places to go to get recipes anymore. I worked in the demonstration kitchen some years back, and I collected a bunch of stuff then because I wanted to augment the resources that I had. This book, the Essential Food Storage Cookbook, that one is still available. You can get it from Amazon, it's like $9 or something. And it's a pretty good one. I really like this one. This is from Crystal Godfrey, and she's done an updated version that I don't have. But I don't think I saw it on Amazon. I think you can probably find it somewhere else, but it's hard to find. And this one's really good because it goes through each category and tells you how much you need to store and storage conditions, and it tells you how to use it specifically, and then it gives you recipes.
What's the name of the book? I can't read it.
It's called I Can't Believe It's Food Storage. It's by Crystal Godfrey. Now this one, anybody recognize this? This is from our own food storage, or hotel home storage center. This came out probably 25 years ago when it came out. I thought it was so good. I was in the Relief Society presidency at the time, but I bought a copy for everyone in the Relief Society. It was only $2. But I found out something really wonderful. If you go to this website, www.prepperssurvives.com, and their food storage cookbooks, they have cookbooks in PDF form that you can download and print out.
Oh, wow.
And this is one of them.
Really? You're ahead of the game.
So if you've got a pencil, write some notes on the back of your handout. So you can look through that. There's, one of the cookbooks is from the Utah Extension Agency. They always have some really good stuff, University of Utah. So, other things, like this is one that I got years ago, but you can't find anything like this anymore. it's just really hard. So I was really glad to find that website. It will give you a lot of information. So let's go through some basic stuff. I'll give you a minute to write down.
Is that a dash between food and storage?
Yes, it's a dash. Food dash storage dash cookbooks dash PDF. The thing I liked about this so much was there was a lot of instructions, but there's also a lot of variety. It would tell you how to make everything from whole wheat bread to Tootsie Rolls. And it has a substitution list in the back, talks about dry pack canning, which you can't do anymore. But see, there's a lot longer list of things that were available from the food storage center. So let's talk about wheat. I would think if you have wheat, you ought to have some kind of wheat grinder. How many people have a wheat grinder? Wheat grinder, I think, surely makes things a lot easier because you can do a lot more things with wheat flour than you can with the wheat berries. But, yes?
Along with just wheat, like if you have dried corn or other things you can, well, at least my grinder, I can grind those to, like making cornmeal or.
Can you do beans?
I don't know about the beans, I haven't thought about them.
Okay, your food grinder, if you saw the little instruction book, should tell you whether you could do beans or not.
Some won't, is that what you're saying?
Well, some will, some won't. So you have to look. But first of all, how to cook whole wheat berries. It's really simple. It's 2 cups of water. Well, let's start with 1, 2, 3. 1 cup of wheat, 2 cups of water, and half a teaspoon of salt. So that's all you need, but you do need to have some time to cook it.
You know, my mom used to, take and soak the wheat overnight, and then it would only take like 15 minutes to cook it in the
Yep.
morning. And we would just put honey over it.
There's a couple of ways you can do it so you can have it for breakfast. You could do it in a thermos. Put your boiling water in with your wheat and your salt. Put the lid on in the morning, it's cooked and ready to eat. You can also do it in a slow cooker. If you do it in a slow cooker, you need to have an extra half a cup of water because you'll be reducing that water all night long. When I cook whole wheat on the stove top, I usually cook a big batch because then I have it ready to use. And you can freeze it and it will be good in the freezer probably 2 to 3 months. And you can also store it in the fridge for about 2 weeks. It'll be good. When you freeze it, what's really good to do is just spread it out on a cookie sheet and flash freeze it for about 15 minutes, and then you can put it in your bag, in your freezer bag, and then that means so you can measure out just what you need. So that's a really easy way to do it. So what's some ways we can use just a whole wheat berry?
You can pop it like popcorn.
Popcorn, okay. What else? You mentioned cereal. Can you think of other things?
Our favorite pancakes is just in a blender and making the pancakes from the whole berries.
Okay. So the blender pancakes is a really good recipe. That's in here.
How do you make it as popcorn, Susan?
Well, we
Hydrate it and cook it, and then just dry it out on a paper towel. And then you just heat your oil in a pan and put a little scoop in and put a lid on it and it pops I'm like, yeah.
But you have to hydrate it and do all that first.
Yeah, you can't pop just the dry kernel, it's gotta be hydrated first.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there are other things you can use the whole wheat berry in. You can use it in salads. You can use it as a substitute for nuts, although cracked wheat works a little better in that regard. You can use it in soups.
Chili.
You can use it in chili. You can use it in sloppy joes, which we're gonna do today. You can try it in that. You can use it as a salad topper. You can use it as a substitute for pasta or rice if you don't have any. There's a lot of things that you can do with it. On cracked wheat, just a note, it's the same kind of directions, the 1, 2, 3. So just, that's an easy way to remember it. One of the things with cracked wheat that you can do that's easier than with a whole berry is you can use it as a meat extender. So instead of using a whole pound of ground beef, you could have half of that be cracked wheat, and no one can tell. I promise, no one can tell. So, yes, very simple. So, whole wheat flour. Let's move on to that really quick. Are you using your whole wheat flour? Are you grinding it, using it? No?
I ate too much when I was growing up. That's all we had. We, 13 kids, we had to live on whole wheat. I knew it was healthy, but
But you got tired of it.
I still like most of it.
Okay, so if you're a family, and most of you probably are only having family at home when they come visit now. But, you can substitute the whole wheat flour for white flour. What I would suggest is if you're doing it with people who are unfamiliar with it, do just no more than half and half white and half whole wheat. And if you needed to back off even more, you could put your cup measure, fill it about 1/4 to 1/3 full of whole wheat flour, and then fill the rest with white flour. That way. So, whole wheat flour is really good for you. It has a lot of vitamins and nutrients in it that white flour does not have. When they do the white flour, they strip everything out of it. It doesn't have the endosperm in it. It doesn't have the bran in it. It does not have any of the vitamins and minerals. Then they go back and they put a few back. But they don't put back everything. It doesn't have the bran for the roughage. It doesn't have the endosperm for the vitamin E. And a lot of the other minerals and vitamins are just gone. So using whole wheat really is a healthy option. When you use the whole wheat flour, you're going to have to make some adjustments with your leavening because it's heavier, and so you need a little more leavening to make it lighter. So if you're doing yeast as a leavening, you would just need to have a longer rise. Just give it more time, it'll get there. If you're using baking powder, you need to increase the amount you use by 1 teaspoon for every 3 cups whole wheat flour, and that will give you a lighter product.
Say that one more time.
1 teaspoon of baking powder for every 3 cups whole wheat flour. That's the increase over what your recipe says. That's how much more you add. If you're using baking soda, there's no adjustment. You're good. If you're making a cake or waffles or pancakes, something like that, you can separate your eggs and beat the whites and fold it in, and that will give you a little extra lightness. So, I would suggest if you haven't been using it, try it in desserts first. Try it in something that you like. The other thing you can do is you can kind of disguise it. Use it in things that are already brown. You can also use it with oatmeal and oat flour, and you'll never know. I made oatmeal cookies. I should have brought some. Using all whole wheat flour, but you can't tell. The flour blends in with the oat flavor, and you would not be able to tell one from the other. One other thing is if you're going to try it for the first time on somebody, don't tell them you're doing it. Because then you've already prejudiced them. Okay, the next major thing that I think I use all the time is powdered milk. Now, believe it or not, I know the milk in here seems like it's kind of expensive, but buying it as non-fat dry milk here is still less than if you go to the grocery store. So, I use powdered milk in my baking all the time to substitute for whole milk, and then I can save the whole milk for drinking. I use it to make everything from pudding to white sauce to put in my pancakes or whatever. One of the recipes that you got is called Magic Mix. This is a really cool thing. I'm gonna show you.
Marie,
Yeah.
the powdered milk, how does that affect lactose intolerant
It's
people?
not the lactose in it.
Well, with lactose intolerant people, I think you're gonna have to have an adjustment with that. I think you're gonna have to maybe store some shelf-stable milk like almond milk or some of those other soy milk or
Last
something like
year.
that.
You get it last year. The shelf life.
So I guess that's what I would suggest for that. We all have individual differences that we have to adjust for. Some of us don't tolerate whole wheat well, my brother doesn't. Some of us don't tolerate milk. Some of us just don't tolerate gluten, so there's a lot of things. This Magic Mix, I want to show it to you. This is powdered milk and butter and flour.
Oh, you call it magic mix?
I call it Magic
It's on your
Mix.
second page.
It's on your page. Anyway, it's just looks like
Thanks, Suzanne.
that. You need to store it in your refrigerator. It makes about 5 cups with the recipe that you have. But with this, the thing I wanted to show you about it, you start with a cup of water, and then 2/3 a cup of this Magic Mix. The thing I like to do when I do mixes, I do a lot of mixes, but I put the directions right on the lid. And then I always have it. The other thing is, I know this goes to this.
We're laughing because it's true, it's happened to us.
Yeah. I'm gonna let
So
this,
are you just adding it to cold water?
you can add it to cold water, you can add it to hot water.
Oh, okay, okay.
If you let your water warm up a little bit, let it warm a little bit more. All you have to do is, if you've got hot water, you put that in there, stir it up, and I'd say like in 2 minutes, you've got your basic white sauce.
Do you have a preference between the 1 cup all-purpose flour or the 1/2 cup cornstarch?
You can use cornstarch if you need to go, if you're gluten sensitive. So you could do that.
But if you're not, just use the
I
flour.
just use the flour. This Magic Mix is really good for making pudding, for making white sauce. I use it to whip up a broccoli and cheese sauce. It's really fast and convenient. If you wanted to do a substitute for a condensed cream soup, like cream of chicken or cream of mushroom or whatever, you can just add your spices into it, and that will give you the equivalent. I don't have any of those condensed soups in my house. I like to control the sodium and whatever else is in there. So this is what I do. So our water's getting hot.
Can I add one thing about the cornstarch and the flour that I discovered? Is that I think with your flour you get a better texture than with the cornstarch,
probably.
a smoother
This
texture.
is, I just wanted to show you how quick that mixed in there.
Yeah, really.
So it's not cooked yet, but that's,
This is for a white sauce?
yeah, this would be for your basic white sauce. If you're gonna do a white sauce, You'd wanna add some salt in with it. So we're gonna let this cook, but I'm gonna make it like a soup. So I'm gonna add a little parsley to it. And a little sage. This will be more like a chicken soup.
Yeah, what did you just add?
Sage,
Oh, sage.
ground sage, garlic powder. I'm sorry, I cook like my grandma. Some garlic and some onion salt.
So do you have this in your instructions here, or
Uh,
maybe not?
it's in the other book.
Okay.
If you wanted to have the instructions, I would give you more instructions. Let's see, which one is it?
So she's.
I'll try to put it onto the website. I mean, not
Okay.
And chicken bouillon.
Oh, my goodness.
So,
Huh. Cool.
that's almost as fast as opening a can. So that's a really good thing. If you have that, and be sure to store it in your fridge because it has butter in it. If you have that, you'll always have it on hand and you can.
Could you use butter powder in it? Or just only to add?
I think, I haven't tried using butter powder, but I don't know why you couldn't. You could use this to make a really quick rice pudding. If you've got some leftover rice from another meal, and put your cinnamon and nutmeg and
Cool.
some sugar in it.
Vanilla.
Vanilla, yes, don't forget the vanilla. So this is one way that I think you could really benefit from using your powdered milk. The other thing is, sometimes you need a can of some other kind of milk that you don't have. So if you wanted to make sweetened condensed milk, I think I put that one on there.
It's on the front.
Yep. So
Now,
this is
now this is powdered milk, not instant powdered milk.
This is not instant, this is the dried, non-fat powdered milk. This sweetened condensed milk recipe, I have used it before, and it makes the equivalent of 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. It works. And below that is evaporated milk. So if you are out of evaporated milk and you need to use it, then you've got this recipe here, and it's just water and milk. The thing that's, anybody know where evaporated milk came from or where it started?
Says
The Great Depression.
War.
World War II.
Yes, World War II. They substituted evaporated milk for cream because all the cream went to the soldiers for butter. So that's where it came from.
My father-in-law couldn't eat any kind of cream or cake without evaporated milk poured over the top of it.
Well, I know my grandfather always put evaporated milk in his postum.
Oh, we'll be okay in that, but
So the other thing is, after you've gotten used to using your powdered milk a little bit, has anybody ever really tried drinking it? Evaporated milk? Not evaporated milk, but powdered milk.
powdered milk.
In Guam, because we didn't have cows, there's not enough land to raise them, so they made powdered milk, and I loved it. It was delicious.
She didn't know any better back
Well, as I said, it's what you get used to, it's what your palate
Well,
gets
I'll
used
tell you
to.
what. There's a couple of things, 2 or 3 things that it depends on. One of them is, you need a really good quality powdered milk. that's important. The other thing is to chill it really well. So, like you would want to make it in the evening and then it would chill during the night so you could have it on your breakfast cereal. And it tastes better that way. The other thing is, to me this sounds like a milkshake. There's a recipe for drinkable powdered milk that has a little bit, like a teaspoon of sugar in a gallon of milk and a half a teaspoon of vanilla. It sounds like milkshake to me. But if you're trying to feed children, maybe that's what they would need. When my oldest children were just little ones, that's all we drank was powdered milk because it was a lot easier. We had a lot of little kids and we only had one car. So I would buy a 50-pound bag of powdered milk down at the home storage center and put it in a big container, and that's what we drank. The kids thought it was fun. I thought it was fine.
Well, a lot of people mix it half and half. They'll take
Yes.
regular milk and mix it.
Yes.
My brother-in-law was raised on that.
Mixing it half and half makes it a little easier, and
Oh, when you asked where the evaporated milk came from, that was smart out of Kara said from evaporated cows.
evaporated cows.
This is between us.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the difference between powdered milk, evaporated cows, not really, powdered milk and instant milk?
Okay, the instant milk it comes in the little granules.
Like moo milk or
Yeah, like, actually moo milk isn't milk.
It isn't?
It is not milk. No, it's a milk product. They have, if you will look at what's in there, it's not just milk. There's a lot of other stuff in there. So personally, I wouldn't drink moo milk, but a lot of people feel like it tastes more like whole milk. But the dried milk, you need less of it than you do with the instant powdered milk. And I think if you've got a good quality, you can mix it up pretty easy. You saw how fast that mixed together. I think part of that is it has butter in it, but still. So, if you're gonna cook with powdered milk, here's a conversion. I'll just give you the basic conversion for milk. If you need 1 cup of milk, you'll need 1 cup of water and 3 tablespoons of dry, non-instant powdered milk. And from that, you can figure out the rest of it if you're good with math.
3 tablespoons of
3 tablespoons of milk and 1 cup of water, and that will make 1 cup of milk. So like if you're making a cake and you need a cup of milk, you would add the powdered milk in with your dried ingredients, and then add the water in with your wet. And you can make your own mixes, but that's not this class. So, I gave you a few little things on the magic mix, but this is only a beginning. Get imaginative.
So did you make your mix with flour or cornstarch?
Mine is with flour. I prefer flour.
We were talking to, if you wanna reheat that and it's cornstarch, it's not gonna be fun to reheat it. You're gonna have to add a little bit of warm water to it to get it the same texture back. But if you use the flour, it reheats fine,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Okay, so let's look at the next item. Let's look at using dried beans. This is, a lot of people don't use their dried beans because maybe they don't, well actually people don't really have enzymes to digest beans. But you can develop them if you eat beans all the time. But if you never eat beans, you're gonna have a problem probably. You need those enzymes. But with the dried beans, there are ways you can use them a lot more than you do use them. A lot of people just buy them in the commercial cans, and that's an okay way to do it, but it won't have as long a shelf life as beans do. So, and it takes up more storage space too. So here's a few little tidbits for you. A pound of beans measures about 2 cups of dry beans, and that makes 6 cups of cooked beans. So some varieties only double in volume, but
Okay, 1 pound equals how many cups?
1 pound of beans equals 2 cups of dry beans, and that makes 6 cups of cooked beans. And if you're going to soak your beans overnight, you want to have 3 cups of water per cup of dry beans because they absorb a lot of water.
1 pound equals 2 cups of dry beans, which converts to 6 cups of cooked beans.
So about a pound of dry beans would make about 9 servings of beans. And if you could get a 1 pound can of cooked beans, that's only 1 2/3 cup of beans. So tell me all your tricks about soaking beans. Do you have any?
Just put them in the water.
Just put them in the water.
My mom always did.
Let them soak overnight.
With baking powder? Not baking powder, baking soda.
If you want to do a quick prep, I learned this from my grandma, is that you put your beans in your pot with your water, and then you add a half a teaspoon of baking soda, and then you bring that to a boil, let it boil for 5 minutes, and take it out and rinse it, and then it's ready to start cooking with it. The same as if you had soaked it overnight.
So she only took 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Cold water.
Well, yeah, from boiling.
Oh, from boiling.
Yes, bring it to boiling
Right.
and then cook for 5 minutes
Oh,
with half a teaspoon of baking soda. It really works.
that's good.
So one other thing is if you have old beans, you really can still use them. You don't have to throw them out. It takes a little more effort to get them to be edible. And what you might have to do is soak them a couple of times, maybe even 3 times if they're 30 years old.
How about if they smell?
If they smell,
Because I've gone out of the food
Yeah,
storage
just
cans
enough soda.
at like the rice after 15 or 20 years and they're really strong.
did you try rinsing them?
Nope.
I
just
would
did
try
it.
that and see if that would help with the smell, because I would think the beans would still be good to eat.
Probably.
So, you can use beans in lots of things. What are some ways that you use beans?
Refried beans.
Refried beans, okay, we have that in the home storage center.
I will brine the dried beans and use them to add more body to a soup and up the protein.
That's a really good use of them. How else do you use beans?
Like chili.
Chili.
Bean soup.
There's lots of soups that you can just add some beans to it and it will increase the nutrition of the soup.
When I do garbanzos, I just like to cook those and then rinse them and throw them in the fridge and keep them cold. I love garbanzo beans with ranch dressing on them. That's it. That's all you need. I mean, they are so good as a snack. And if you really want to get fancy, you can blend them up and add a little tahini paste if you want to, and make your own hummus. Yeah.
Yep, makes good hummus. Yes.
Family favorite was bean burger soup. Made lots of hamburger and beans and vegetables. It was wonderful.
So one of the things I would suggest for you, if you have some freezer space, is when you do cook beans, cook extra, because you can drain those and then you can freeze them just like I talked about doing the whole wheat. If you just have like a cup or 2 cups in a bag that's already pre-measured, then you just have to take that out and you can add it to your soup right from the bag. You don't have to thaw it out first. So it makes it really easy to do it that way.
How about lima beans? I love lima beans.
I think you could do lima beans exactly the same way.
Same way.
And this is not really, how you want to store your beans, but I'm just saying a different way to make it more convenient to use so that you can just pull them out of your freezer and use them. Okay, one of the other things that you can do that maybe you haven't ever heard of or thought of is bean butter. You want to tell
I
us?
was just gonna say, if you wanna try different kinds of beans, the mill in Twin Falls, the granary there, carries all different kinds of beans. You can call them and ask them for an order sheet, and they'll package it up for you and have it ready when you go to pick it up. I mean, and there's 35 different kinds of beans to use.
Yeah, there are.
But make sure you check your order, because I specifically went to get the Anasazi beans. They're supposed to be gasless for chili. And when I got them, they had packaged another one that started with an A for me that I hadn't ordered. So just double check. But it's fun. We have little tiny black beans that look like bugs, but they sure taste nutty when you cook them.
What's the name of the company?
It's
If you Google, Twin Falls Bean Company.
or grain company, yeah. And then they'll ship you or email you an order form for them, but it tells you each one has a little description of it and what they're used for, where they're native to. And we grow a lot of different varieties of beans over in the Twin Falls areas. I mean, more than what you'd ever
Yeah.
think that there were.
So there is also, you can get some at Walton's. There's a lot of beans in the bulk section
Yeah.
at Winco, a lot of different kinds. So you can just try and see what you like. But, there are sources to find beans. Let me tell you about this bean butter here. Okay, so what this is a substitute for fat in your recipes. So this would increase the protein content and it would decrease the fat. One thing is you only want to substitute half the fat with beans.
Okay.
And another thing you would want to do is match the color. So if you're cooking something that's light, you want to use a white bean, like Great Northerns or navy beans or something like that. If you're cooking something dark, you can use dark beans. This is made from the black beans. It's a black bean brownie. It's a cake mix and a can of beans.
You know how good that smells. I walked in and I smelled that chocolate and I went, oh, this is a good class.
So when you're making the bean butter, there are several ways you can do it. I just dumped the whole can, liquid and everything, into a blender and pureed it and then added it. That's one way you can do it. Another way that you can do it is use it from your cooked beans that you have cooked yourself and then just mash them really good. You can do it that way. You can also use bean flour. And some of you can grind beans in your wheat grinders. So this gives you some directions on how to do it. One of the things you might want to be aware of, that if you're using bean butter, it will make a softer product, it won't be crisp, so you want to not do like, I don't know, snickerdoodles or something. You want to do a softer cookie with it. It does say that if you could add a little flour to make them crisper. So that's some stuff about that.
I'm missing that page.
You ever seen the bean butter page? Well, we'll
That's okay.
take care of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the last thing I wanted to cover is honey. So you might want to take some notes on this. All of you know that when your honey crystallizes, that's no problem. You just have to warm it up and milk it again. It doesn't affect the product at all. What you might not know that honey is about twice as sweet as sugar, so you don't need near as much honey. Use about half a cup of honey to equal 1 cup of sugar. If you're going to use honey in a recipe that calls for sugar, you need to increase the time for beating it, incorporating it into your recipe. The other thing that you may not know is honey is acid. So you'll need to add a half a teaspoon of baking soda for each cup of honey that you use in a recipe. And that will neutralize the acid.
Half a teaspoon.
Half a
of baking.
teaspoon baking soda for each cup of honey. The other thing is when you bake it, the honey will brown quicker, so you need to reduce your heat by 25 degrees.
Even at our altitude? Okay.
Yep. That's just so it won't brown too quickly and it'll be too dark on the outside. You might, if you've got Yes?
I'm just a little bit behind. Use 1/2 teaspoon baking soda per how much honey?
Each cup of honey
Okay,
used in a recipe. Normally you don't use a whole cup of recipe, so you would reduce that amount.
So do you mix it in the honey or just mix it
Just-
into what you make?
Just in your recipe. It doesn't have to be in the honey. The other thing is when you substitute honey is you need to reduce the liquid in your recipe because honey has liquid in it. So if your recipe calls for a cup of white sugar, you can substitute 1/2 cup of honey, but then reduce your liquid in your recipe by 1/4 cup. Then it won't be too runny. The other thing you could do is if your recipe doesn't have liquid in it, then you'll need to add a 1/4 cup of flour for each cup of honey, or 3/4 cup of honey you put in.
Say that again.
If your recipe does not have liquid in it, and you're substituting for sugar, then you need to add a 1/4 cup of flour in with your recipe to make up for that extra moisture the honey puts in. If you're using it to make jams or jellies or something like that, you wanna increase your cooking time so that you can reduce the amount of moisture in your final product. Easy way to measure honey is to just do some baking spray in your measuring cup, and then the honey will slide right out, and you probably all know that.
when it crystallizes, then if it's in like a quart jar, or a pint jar, or whatever, I always put a trivet, like round, flat thing in the bottom. And then don't ever add water to honey, because that'll just dilute it,
Right.
and then it'll be really runny. But, so then you have the water below the top of the jar, and just have that sort of simmering.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it boiling, just
Yeah.
let it just be at a low heat and just be patient.
Yeah.
Just be patient, it will come back to the liquid.
And it does darken, but that doesn't matter at all.
No, it doesn't matter, it doesn't affect the taste of it. So, that's pretty much the basics. Does anybody have any questions?
Would you repeat the baking soda? What does it do to the honey? It balances?
It balances the acid in the honey.
acid.
So, what I would like to do is let's try a couple of things. We have some recipes. I have a recipe for a salad. It's whole wheat salad. And you have a recipe for the rolls and the brownies. And I've got the sloppy joe stuff over there. So let me get that, and then we can try some of this.
So the brownies are a brownie mix or a cake mix?
It's a brownie mix.
Okay, alright.
And not the other ingredients on the brownie mix, just
It's a can of brownies and a mix, that's it. That is all. Okay, so we've got napkins and plates here. You can make you a sloppy joe, try a little bit of salad and have a brownie, see what you think.
Thank you.
So I hope that you go home and you try using more of your food storage, because it needs to be rotated.
It does.
And you need to get used to it. So, I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today and to share some of this, and I hope that it helps you, because we don't talk about food storage a whole lot anymore in the church, but I know there was an article in the Leah Home, it's probably about June, this summer. They talked about preparedness, and they talked about the spiritual preparedness and the temporal preparedness. And we can be prepared spiritually, but we still need to eat.
That's right.
So thank you, and come on up and try some of this.
Thank